Queen Valera stood at the tall window of her throne room and watched the human ship descend through the purple clouds of Dasha Prime. She had ruled her empire for 40 years. She had fought wars, signed treaties, and buried 2 husbands. She thought she had seen everything the galaxy could offer, but she had never married a human before. The alliance between the Thashan Empire and Earth was only 3 years old. It was born from desperation, not friendship. The Kef Dominion had been expanding for decades, swallowing smaller civilizations like a beast that could never be satisfied. Alone, neither the Thashans nor the humans could stand against them. Together, they had a chance, but alliances needed symbols. They needed something to show the galaxy that 2 species had truly joined together. And so the council had proposed a marriage between the Thashan queen and a human representative. Valera had agreed, but she had one condition. She did not want a politician. She did not want a general or an ambassador or anyone who would try to influence or rule. She wanted someone quiet, someone simple, someone who would stand beside her at ceremonies and stay out of her way the rest of the time. The humans had assured her they understood completely. The ship landed in the courtyard below. Valera's advisor, a tall Thashan named Counselor Myra, stood beside her with a data tablet. "His name is Danny Cole," Myra said, reading from the file. 38 years old. Former military, but only in logistics and supply coordination. No combat record. No political connections. No family wealth. He volunteered for this assignment. Volunteered? Valera raised one eyebrow. A human volunteered to leave his world forever and marry an alien queen he has never met? Apparently so, Your Majesty. His psychological profile suggests he is looking for a quiet life away from Earth. Some personal troubles in his past. Though the details are classified. Valera watched as the ship's door opened and a figure stepped out into the sunlight. He was smaller than she expected. Average height for a human, with brown hair that was slightly too long and a face that was neither handsome nor ugly. He wore simple civilian clothes that looked worn and comfortable. He carried only one bag over his shoulder. He looked up at the palace and squinted against the light. Then he smiled, a small and genuine smile, like a man who had arrived somewhere he wanted to be. "He looks ordinary," Valera said. "That is what you requested." "Your Majesty." Yes, it is." The wedding took place 1 week later. It was a massive event, broadcast across 12 star systems. Representatives from 100 worlds attended. The ceremony lasted 6 hours and included rituals from both Thashan and human traditions dot through all of it. Danny Cole stood beside Valera, looking slightly uncomfortable in his ceremonial robes. He spoke his vows clearly but quietly. He did not try to make speeches or draw attention to himself. When the ceremony finally ended and they were pronounced bonded, he simply turned to Valera and asked, "So, where do I sleep?" She had expected to find him annoying. She had expected him to ask questions, to make demands, to try to insert himself into her government. But Danny did none of these things done in the weeks that followed. He kept to himself. He explored the palace gardens, learning the names of plants that were strange to him. He spent time in the kitchens, talking to the cooks and learning to prepare Thashan food. He studied the language with surprising dedication, and within a month, he could hold simple conversations without a translator. He never asked to attend council meetings. He never questioned her decisions. He never tried to use his position for personal gain. One evening, Valera found him sitting alone on a balcony, watching the twin moons rise over the distant mountains. She had been looking for him to discuss an upcoming diplomatic event, but something made her pause. He looked peaceful, content, like a man who had found exactly what he was looking for. "May I join you?" she asked. Danny looked up and smiled. "Of course, Your Majesty. It's your balcony." She sat in the chair beside him. For a while, they simply watched the moons in silence. You are different than I expected, Valera said finally. Different how? Most humans I've met are louder, more aggressive. They always seem to want something. Danny nodded slowly. I can understand that. Humans can be pretty intense, but you are not. I've had enough intensity for one lifetime. He paused, and something flickered in his eyes. A shadow of memory, there and gone in an instant. This is nice, quiet, beautiful. I'm grateful to be here. Valera studied him. There was something about the way he spoke, the way he held himself. Something that did not quite match the simple logistics coordinator in his file. What did you do before this? She asked. In the military? Supply chains, mostly? Making sure equipment got where it needed to go. Boring stuff. And yet you volunteered to leave your entire world behind. Danny was quiet for a long moment. Sometimes a man needs a fresh start, Your Majesty. Sometimes the past gets too heavy to carry. She wanted to ask more. She wanted to know what weight he carried, what shadows lived behind his easy smile. But something in his expression made her stop. There were boundaries here, walls he had built around parts of himself. Everyone had secrets, even queens. Perhaps especially queens. You may call me Valera, she said instead. When we are alone. Danny looked at her with surprise. Then his smile warmed, becoming something more real than before. Thank you, Valera. That means a lot. They sat together until the moons had fully risen, not speaking, simply sharing the silence. It was the first time since her last husband died that Valera had felt truly comfortable with another person. In the months that followed, she found herself seeking out Danny's company more and more. He was easy to talk to. He listened more than he spoke, and when he did speak, his words were thoughtful and kind. He never tried to influence her decisions, but sometimes he would ask questions that helped her see problems from new angles. She began to think of him as a friend. Perhaps even something more. But she never forgot that moment of shadow in his eyes. She never forgot the feeling that there was more to Danny Cole than he showed the world. The galaxy was at peace, though. The Cath had been quiet. Her empire was stable. Whatever secrets her husband carried, they could stay buried. Or so she believed. The attack came without warning on a cold morning 6 months after the wedding. Valera was in her private chambers reviewing trade agreements when Counselor Mira burst through the door. The older woman's face was pale, her scales flushed with fear. Your Majesty, the Cath have broken the ceasefire. 3 border colonies have gone silent. Valera felt her blood turn cold. Silent? What do you mean silent? No communications. No distress signals. Our scout ships found only debris and bodies. The colonies are gone. All of them. Over 2 million people. Within the hour, Valera had assembled her war council in the Great Strategy Chamber. Admirals, generals, and intelligence chiefs filled the room. Their voices raised an argument and accusation. At the back of the chamber, almost invisible in the shadows, sat Danny Cole. Valera had invited him as a courtesy. The humans were allies, after all, and he was their representative. She did not expect him to contribute anything. Admiral Tyros, the commander of the Thashan fleet, slammed his fist on the table. We must respond immediately. Every hour we wait, the Cath advance further into our territory. With what ships? General Voss demanded. Our main fleet is positioned to defend the core worlds. If we move them to the border, we leave ourselves open to attack from behind. The Cath have been planning this for years, Intelligence Chief Nara added grimly. Their new warlord, Gorak, has united the clans under a single banner. He has resources we did not anticipate. Valera listened to her advisors argue. Each one had valid points. Each one had fears and concerns that could not be dismissed. But no one had solutions. How many ships do they have in the sector? She asked. Admiral Tyros consulted his data. At least 300 capital vessels, Your Majesty. We have perhaps 100 that could respond in time. 3-to-1 odds, Valera said quietly. And the Keth are not known for their mercy. If we engage directly, we will lose, Tyros admitted. But if we do not engage, they will continue to advance. They will take world after world until they reach the core systems themselves. The room fell silent. Every option led to disaster. Every path led to death, if I may. The voice was quiet, almost casual. Everyone turned to look at the human in the corner. Danny had risen from his seat. His posture had changed somehow. He stood straighter, his eyes moving across the tactical displays with sharp focus. The Keth supply lines run through the Narak corridor, he said. It's the only viable route for ships that size. There are 3 choke points along the corridor, all of them dependent on a single refueling station. He walked to the main display and pointed to a location deep in enemy territory. Here, coordinates 773 by 429 by 0-8-1. Admiral Tyros stared at him. How would you know this? That information is not in any public database. Danny shrugged. I read a lot. You read classified Keth military intelligence? I read whatever I can get my hands on. Supply chains are interesting to me. Professional curiosity. Valera watched her husband carefully. There was something different about him now. The easygoing gardener had disappeared. In his place stood someone harder, more focused. Someone who looked at a star map and saw things that trained military officers had missed. Check the coordinates, she ordered. Tyros worked the controls with skeptical hands. The display zoomed in on the location Danny had indicated. A moment later, the Admiral's scales went pale. There's a station there. Exactly where he said. Our intelligence had it listed as a minor outpost, but the energy readings... He ran calculations quickly. If this station is feeding their entire forward fleet, and we destroyed it, their ships would have approximately 6 days of operational capacity, Danny said calmly. After that, they would have to pull back or risk running dry in hostile space. You would not need to defeat them. You would just need to outlast them. The room erupted in discussion. Officers crowded around the display, running simulations and debating tactics. Hope had entered the chamber for the first time. Valera did not join the discussion. Instead, she walked to where Danny stood at the edge of the group. That was not the observation of someone who reads supply chain reports for fun, she said quietly. Danny's expression flickered. I spent a lot of years studying logistics, Valera. You learn to see patterns. What patterns did you see in a classified Keth military database? He was quiet for a moment. Some patterns are universal. Resources have to flow. Armies have to eat. Ships have to refuel. If you understand how things move, you understand how to stop them from moving. And you just happen to remember the exact coordinates of this station. I have a good memory. She wanted to press further. She wanted to demand the truth. But her admirals were calling for her attention, and there was a war to plan. The raid on the refueling station was launched 3 days later. A small, fast strike force slipped through Keth defenses using routes that Danny had quietly suggested. They hit the station hard and fast, destroying it completely before enemy reinforcements could respond. The effect was immediate. The Keth advance stopped. Their great fleet sat motionless in space, ships running low on fuel and supplies. Warlord Garuk had no choice but to order a retreat. The Thashan Empire had bought itself time in the celebrations that followed. Danny stayed in the background. He accepted no praise, gave no interviews, made no claims of credit. When anyone asked about his role, he simply said he had made a few suggestions. But Valera could not forget what she had seen in that council chamber. The way his eyes had moved across the tactical displays. The precise, Certain way he had spoken about enemy movements and weaknesses. That was not a logistics coordinator. That was something else entirely. She found him that night in his usual place on the balcony, watching the moon's rise. "You saved millions of lives today," she said, sitting beside him. "Your admirals saved millions of lives." "I just pointed at a map, Danny." She waited until he looked at her. "Who are you, really?" The question hung in the air between them. For a long moment, he did not answer. She could see him weighing options, considering responses, deciding how much truth to reveal. "I'm your husband," he said finally. "I'm a man who wants a quiet life. And I'm someone who will do whatever is necessary to protect the people he cares about." It was not an answer, but it was a promised thought, and somewhere deep in enemy space, Warlord Goruk was planning his revenge. The counterattack came 2 weeks later, and it came straight for the heart of the Empire. Valera was in her private study when the first explosions shook the palace. The lights flickered. Alarms began screaming throughout the building. She ran to the window and saw fire rising from the outer walls. Councilor Myra burst in seconds later. "Your Majesty, Keth dropships have landed in the city. They bypassed our orbital defenses completely. We think they had help from traitors in the defense grid." "How many?" "We do not know. Hundreds, perhaps thousands. They are fighting through the streets toward the palace." Valera's blood ran cold. This was not an invasion. This was an assassination. Warlord Goruk was coming for her personally. "Where's Danny?" she asked. "I do not know, Your Majesty. We need to get you to the emergency bunker immediately." 4 royal guards escorted Valera through the palace corridors. The sounds of battle grew louder with every step. Gunfire, explosions, screams. The Keth were already inside the building. They reached a junction and found bodies. Fashion guards, torn apart by weapons designed to breach starship armor. The Keth were not taking prisoners. "This way, Your Majesty," the lead guard said, pulling her toward a side passage. They made it 20 steps before the wall exploded. Valera was thrown to the ground, her ears ringing. Through the smoke and dust, she saw massive shapes emerging from the breach. Keth shock troops, each one standing 8 feet tall, covered in black armor, carrying weapons that glowed with deadly energy. 2 of her guards were already dead. The remaining 2 stood over her, weapons raised, knowing they could not win but determined to die trying. "The Queen," one of the Keth said, his voice like grinding metal. "Warlord Goruk will be pleased. Kill the guards. Take her alive." The Keth advanced. Valera closed her eyes, waiting for the end. "That's not going to happen." The voice was calm, almost casual. Valera's eyes snapped open. Danny stood at the end of the corridor. He was wearing the same simple clothes he always wore. He had no armor. He carried no weapons. He looked exactly like what his file said he was. An ordinary man who had no business being anywhere near a battlefield. The lead Keth laughed. "A human? One human thinks he can stop us." "I'm giving you one chance," Danny said. His voice had changed. It was still quiet, but there was something underneath it now. Something cold. "Turn around. Walk away. Tell Goruk he made a mistake. Kill him," the Keth commander ordered. 3 warriors charged forward, weapons raised. What happened next would stay with Valera for the rest of her life. Danny moved. He did not run or dodge or take cover. He simply moved toward the Keth like water flowing around stones. The first warrior swung a blade that could cut through steel. Danny was not there when it landed. He was beside the warrior, his hand finding a gap in the armor at the neck. The Keth fell without a sound. The second warrior fired his weapon. Danny had already shifted, the blast passing through empty air where he had been a heartbeat before. He caught the warrior's arm, twisted, and the weapon discharged into the third Keth's chest in 3 seconds. 3 Keth shock troops were down. The remaining 4 hesitated. They had killed hundreds of enemies across a dozen worlds. They had never seen anything like this. Danny did not hesitate. He flowed through them like a ghost. Every movement was precise, efficient, deadly. He found weak points in armor that should have had none. He redirected strikes with a touch, turning the Keth's own strength against them. He killed without passion, without anger, without apparent effort. In 11 seconds, 7 Keth shock troops lay dead on the floor. Danny stood among the bodies, not even breathing hard. He reached down and picked up a fallen energy rifle, checking its charge with the ease of long practice. Then he looked at Valera. For a moment, she did not recognize him. The man standing before her was not her husband. This was something else. Something ancient and dangerous, wearing a human face. "More will be coming," Danny said. His voice was still calm. "We need to move. Can you walk?" Valera found her feet. Her surviving guards helped her up, staring at Danny with something like fear. "Who are you?" she whispered. Danny's expression softened slightly. For just a moment, she saw the man she had married behind those cold eyes. "Someone who should have told you the truth a long time ago," he said. "But we don't have time for that now. Stay behind me." They moved through the palace in a nightmare of smoke and blood. Twice more they encountered Keth squads. Each time, Danny dealt with them so quickly that Valera barely had time to register the threat before it was over. He moved differently now. He walked differently. Even his breathing was different. Everything about him had changed. This was what he had been hiding. This was the weight he carried. They reached the emergency bunker just as Thashan forces began to push back the invasion. Inside the secure command center, Valera finally had a moment to breathe. She turned to face her husband. "Explain," she said. Now, Danny set down the rifle he had been carrying. He suddenly looked tired, old, like a man who had been running for a very long time and had finally stopped. "My real name is Daniel Collison," he said quietly. "I was not a logistics coordinator. I was a member of a human special operations unit so classified that officially it does not exist. I have been a soldier since I was 17 years old. I have done things that I cannot speak about, in places that are not on any map. I have killed more people than I can count." Valera stared at him. "The humans sent me an assassin?" "They sent you a weapon," Danny corrected. "One they wanted to hide somewhere no one would think to look. One they thought would never be needed again." He met her eyes. "I am sorry, Valera. I wanted to be the man in the file. I wanted that more than anything. But I could not let them hurt you." Outside, the sounds of battle were fading. The Keth assault had failed, but inside the bunker, something far more important had shattered. Valera looked at the man she had married and realized she did not know him at all. The bunker was quiet now. The battle reports on the screens showed green instead of red. The Keth assault had been pushed back. The city was being secured. The immediate crisis was over, but Valera felt no relief. She sat across from Danny in a small private room off the main command center. 2 cups of tea sat untouched on the table between them. Her husband looked different now. Not physically, but in the way he held himself. The mask of the simple gardener was gone. "Tell me everything," she said. Danny was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with memory. "I grew up on a colony world at the edge of human space. When I was 17, raiders hit my town. They killed my parents. They killed almost everyone I knew. A military rescue team found me 3 days later. I had survived by hiding in the water treatment plant." He paused. "The soldiers who found me saw something. I do not know what. They offered me a choice. I could go to a refugee camp and start over as a normal citizen, Or I could come with them and learn to make sure what happened to my town never happened to anyone else. You chose to fight. I chose to fight. They trained me for 8 years. Not regular military training. Something else. Something deeper. They taught me how to move, how to think, how to see the world in ways normal people cannot. They broke me down and built me back up as something new. Valera thought of the way he had moved through those Keth warriors. Fluid, precise, inhuman. What did they call you? Danny's jaw tightened. The quiet death, because enemies who saw me did not live to tell anyone about it. For 30 years, I was the solution to problems that could not be solved through normal means. When diplomacy failed, when armies could not reach, when everything else was impossible, they sent me. How many missions? I stopped counting after 200. It would not help you to know the number. Valera absorbed this. Her husband, the man who tended her gardens and made friends with her kitchen staff, had been one of the deadliest weapons in human history. Why did you stop? Danny closed his eyes. Because I broke. Not physically. Something inside me. I woke up one morning, and I could not remember why I was doing it anymore. I could not remember what it felt like to be a person instead of a tool. I walked into my commander's office and told him I was done. And they just let you go? No, they do not just let people like me go. We know too much. We can do too much. They had to put me somewhere safe. Somewhere I could not talk, could not be found, could not be used by anyone else. A bitter smile crossed his face. Marriage to an alien queen on the other side of the galaxy seemed perfect to them. Hide the weapon in plain sight. You were never supposed to be needed again. No, I was supposed to grow old quietly and die without anyone ever knowing what I had been. And honestly, Valera, that was what I wanted too. When I stepped off that ship and saw this world, I felt something I had not felt in decades. Hope, peace, the possibility of being something other than death with a human face. He looked at her directly. I was not pretending with you. Everything I felt, everything I said, that was real. I wanted to be Danny, the logistics coordinator. I wanted to be your husband. I wanted to watch sunsets and grow vegetables and forget what my hands were trained to do. Valera felt something in her chest. Anger, yes. Betrayal, but also something else. Understanding, perhaps. Or pity. Why did you not tell me? Because I was afraid. His voice cracked slightly. Afraid that if you knew what I was, you would look at me differently. That the peace I found here would disappear. That I would become the weapon again instead of the man. He spread his hands. And now here we are. She was quiet for a long time. The weight of his confession sat between them like a physical thing. The Kath will return, she said finally. Gorak will not accept this defeat. No, he will not. Can you stop him? Danny met her eyes. In that moment, she saw both men he had been. The killer and the gardener. The weapon and the husband. Yes, he said quietly. I can stop him. But if I do, if I step back into that world, I do not know if I can ever leave it again. Everyone will know. The galaxy will know. I will never be invisible again. Is that such a terrible thing? I do not know. For 30 years, invisibility was the only thing that kept me safe. That kept the people around me safe. When you become known, you become a target. And everyone near you becomes a target too. Valera reached across the table and took his hands. They were ordinary hands, calloused from gardening, warm and human. It was hard to believe they had killed hundreds of people. I have been a target my entire life, she said. I was born a target. Every queen is. Every leader is. We do not get to choose safety, Danny. We only get to choose what we fight for. And what are you choosing? I am choosing my people, my empire, my husband. She squeezed his hands. I am choosing you. All of you. Not just the gardener. Not just the weapon. The whole man. Danny stared at her. For a moment, his eyes were wet. You should hate me, he whispered. I lied to you. I hid what I was. I let you believe you married someone ordinary. Perhaps. But you also saved my life. You saved my city. And when you had every reason to stay hidden, you chose to protect me instead. She lifted his hands and pressed them to her cheeks. I do not need an ordinary husband, Danny. I need someone who will stand beside me when the darkness comes. Can you be that person? He was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. Yes, he said. I can be that person. Then let the galaxy see what humanity sent to protect me. Let them see what happens when they threaten the Thashan Empire and the Human Alliance. Let them all see. Outside, alarms began to sound again. An officer burst into the room. Your Majesty! Warlord Garuk's flagship has broken through our orbital defenses. He's landing personally with his elite guard. Danny rose to his feet. The tired, broken man vanished. In his place stood something older, something colder, something that had walked through fire and emerged unchanged. Then it is time to end this, he said, and Valera saw in his eyes that the quiet death was awake once more. Warlord Gorak landed in the palace courtyard as the suns reached their peak. His dropship burned a crater into the ancient stones that had stood for 1,000 years. 50 of his elite guard formed around him as the ramp lowered. Each one was a veteran of 100 battles, chosen from the finest warriors of the Keth Dominion. Gorak himself was massive, even by Keth standards. 9 feet tall, covered in ceremonial armor that had belonged to warlords for generations. His eyes burned with hatred and wounded pride. He had come to kill a queen and break an empire. He expected resistance. He expected guards and soldiers, and perhaps even a last desperate stand. He did not expect one man standing alone in the center of the courtyard. Danny. Cole waited in the shadow of a fallen pillar. He wore no armor. He carried no gun. In his right hand was a Thashan ceremonial blade, a weapon considered too light and delicate for real combat. It had been a wedding gift, meant for display only. One human? Gorak's voice echoed across the courtyard. The mighty Thashan Empire sends one human to face me? The Empire did not send me, Danny said. His voice was quiet but carried clearly in the silence. My wife asked me to deliver a message. Gorak's mandibles clicked with amusement. Your wife? You are the human who married the queen? The logistics coordinator? He laughed, a sound like stones crashing together. I have heard of you. They say you gave some advice during our first attack. Clever for a human. But advice will not help you now. The message, Danny continued as if he had not been interrupted, is this. Humans are persistent predators. We do not run. We do not hide. We do not surrender. When we choose a target, we follow it across any distance, over any terrain, for as long as it takes. We never stop. He raised the ceremonial blade. The metal caught the sunlight and gleamed. Your hunt ends here, Warlord. You just do not know it yet. For a moment, Gorik was silent. Then he gestured to his guards. Kill him. Make it slow. 10 warriors advanced, weapons ready. They moved in formation, professional and confident. They had killed thousands of enemies together. One unarmed human was not even worth their attention. Danny moved. He did not charge or retreat. He simply flowed forward like water finding cracks in stone. The first warrior swung a massive blade. Danny stepped inside the arc, too close for the weapon to matter. The ceremonial blade slid through a gap in the armor at the throat. The warrior fell. Danny was already moving to the next target. He caught a thrust on his blade, redirected it into another guard, and used a moment of confusion to strike twice more. 4 warriors down in as many seconds. The remaining 6 hesitated. They had never seen anything move like this. This was not fighting as they understood it. This was something else. Something that did not follow the rules of combat they had learned. Danny gave them no time to adjust. He was among them like a shadow, his blade finding every weakness, every gap, every moment of vulnerability. He fought without wasted movement, without emotion, without mercy. Each strike was precise. Each step was calculated. Each death was inevitable. In 20 seconds, 10 elite Keth warriors lay dead in the courtyard. Danny stood among the bodies. His breathing had not changed. His hands were steady. A thin line of blue blood ran down the ceremonial blade. He looked at Gorok. "Send more," he said quietly. "Or come yourself." Gorok's eyes had changed. The amusement was gone. In its place was something new. Recognition. Fear. "Where are you?" the warlord asked. "I am a logistics coordinator," Danny replied. "I arrange for things to be where they need to be. Right now, I need you to be dead." Gorok roared and charged forward. He was massive, fast, covered in armor that could withstand starship weapons. He had killed hundreds of enemies with his bare hands. He was the greatest warrior the Keth had, produced in generations. Danny waited. The warlord swung a fist that could shatter stone. Danny stepped aside, letting it pass within inches of his face. He did not counterattack. He simply moved. Gorok swung again. And again. Each blow was powerful enough to destroy. Each blow hit nothing but air. Danny flowed around the attacks like smoke, never quite where the warlord expected, never quite within reach. "Stand still," Gorok bellowed. "Fight me." "I am fighting you," Danny said calmly. "You are just too slow to see it." And then he struck. The ceremonial blade, so light and delicate, found the small gap between Gorok's helmet and chestplate. It slid in smoothly, precisely, driven by a hand that had made this exact movement thousands of times before. Gorok froze. His eyes went wide. "Impossible," he whispered. "I am the warlord. I am invincible." "No," Danny said quietly. "You are just another target." He withdrew the blade. Gorok fell to his knees, then collapsed face first onto the ancient stones. The remaining guards stared in shock. Their warlord, their leader, the greatest warrior of their generation, was dead. Killed by a single human with a decorative blade. Danny looked at them. "Go home," he said. "Tell your people what happened here. Tell them that the Thashan Empire is protected. Tell them that humans do not forget and do not forgive. Tell them that if they ever threaten this world again, I will come for them. Not their soldiers, not their generals, them, personally, in their homes, in their beds. Wherever they hide, I will find them." He pointed the bloody blade at the dropship. "Go, now." They ran. The finest warriors of the Keth Dominion ran from one man standing alone in a ruined courtyard. Danny watched them go. Then, slowly, the tension drained from his body. The killer faded. The man returned. He looked up at the palace balcony where Valera stood watching. She had seen everything. The violence, the skill, the cold precision of a weapon doing what it was designed to do. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. Then Valera smiled. And Danny smiled back. The war was over. The Keth would not return. The message had been sent to every civilization in the galaxy. The Thashan Queen's human husband was not to be underestimated. That evening, after the bodies had been removed, and the courtyard cleaned and the victory celebrations begun, Valera found Danny in the palace garden. He was kneeling in the dirt, checking on the tomato plants he had been growing for months. You could have anyone in the galaxy right now, she said. You could have power, fame, anything you wanted. Danny looked up at her. His hands were covered in soil. His face was peaceful. I have everything I want, he said. Right here. She sat beside him in the dirt, not caring about her royal will you teach me. She asked, how to garden. Danny laughed. It was a real laugh, warm and genuine, with no shadows behind it. Yes, he said. I would like that very much. And so the quiet death became the Queen's gardener once more. But now the galaxy knew his name. Now every enemy of the Thashan Empire knew what waited for them if they stepped out of line. Humanity had sent their best. And their best just wanted to grow tomatoes. Some weapons, it turned out, were most dangerous when they chose peace.